Good afternoon, everybody. Hello. Hope you can all see and hear me okay. Great to be here with you. Who can I see? I can see Claire, and I can see Tricia. I can see Elizabeth. I can see Anne. I can see Wendy and David and possibly Daisy, Susan and Linda and Ronnie, I think. Yeah. So hello everybody, and I hope you are all okay. I am here. I am currently dry, not been for much of the day, and a lot of places are very wet. I've been a little bit brave starting in a field where it could be a little bit slippery. But as you can see, there is some sunshine currently. My glasses have gone dark. There's this strange yellow light in the sky I haven't seen for some time, but here it is this afternoon. So it is lovely to see everybody. I'm looking into the sun a little bit, so I can't. That's better. I can read the chat now. That's better. I'll read it a little bit better anyway. So no, it's a little bit questionable, Leslie, weather-wise. It was absolutely torrential rain all the way while I was driving down here. I got here and had a little walk around part of the route, gave it up and went and had some lunch in a coffee shop. And when I came out it was no better, but by the time I'd kind of started to have a look around and gone and got my stuff out of the car, and then I walked around sort of the entire route just to check everything, the weather had dried up a bit. So there are a few black clouds I can see. They're coming this way, possibly. I'm hoping at the very least, if it's going to rain, please don't let it rain while I'm walking on this grass. I'm in a field to start. Let it rain when I get back on some proper pathways at least. See you in your magic mirror. Just for you, Elizabeth, I was looking at the estate agents earlier. So I was talking to Emma the other day about how neither of us had any plans to move house unless infirmity in years to come makes it absolutely essential. I said, yeah, the only time I ever look in estate agent windows now is on tours when Elizabeth's there. Oh, that's good, Susan. I've not seen Tish for a while, so it's nice to know that she's okay. And nice to see that everybody's okay, and that everybody is indeed here with me. So here come the clouds. At least I don't have to point the camera directly at the sun this afternoon. I've forgotten the name. You see, it's so long since we saw it. Actually, I was just checking something on the phone. So, well, I make it 3 o'clock, everybody, and that is time to make a start. Oh, I don't have to do anything to make a start. I just start, don't I? It's not like ones at home where I have to start recording them. So, a warm welcome. Guiwa. Claire, I'm not sure how you'd pronounce that. Well, we might see some anyway. I saw a few while I was walking around, especially in the churchyard. I saw 2 or 3, and a couple down here at the bottom of the field as well. So, yeah, big warm welcome, everybody, wherever you are joining from. And it's lovely to see you here today on this tour with me in Chipping Norton. It's been a while since I did any live tours, because I've been away in Germany a lot doing other stuff, and it's certainly been a long time, or feels like a long time anyway, since we were in the Cotswolds. So thank you to everybody who has supported this community funded tour and contributed, so we're able to be here today and do it. And don't forget, I got 2 new community funded tours up now on Buy Me a Coffee in the wish list. And so if you enjoy today's and you want to contribute to those, please go ahead and do so. So we're in Chipping Norton, we're in the Cotswolds, and you know, an area famous for numerous things, for beautiful golden coloured stone, for its medieval wealth due to the wool trade, and for being a very unspoilt and very popular destination for visitors in the UK. So looking forward to showing you around Chipping Norton. Chipping Norton is not, I guess, one of the most unspoilt and picturesque of Cotswold locations. That's for sure. It's not one of the big visitor destinations. It's a market town. It's quite a local centre. A lot of local people come here for the shops and for the Wednesday markets. And it's at the junction of several important roads through the area. And a lot of nice residential property in and around the town as well. But it is not like some of the Cotswold towns where it's full of souvenir shops and tea rooms and those kinds of things. It's much more of a market town where the local people go about their business, I would say. But for all that, it has some beautiful buildings and a lot of very interesting connections as well. So now let me make sure I get the right button, because they did swap it around on this streaming software. There we go. So I'm starting in a field, very brave because it's a little bit slippery, but as long as I stay to kind of the more trodden parts and avoid the little gifts that the sheep have kindly deposited at various points in the fields, we are here in the field and we're on the edge of the town. And the reason I like to come up here is to show you this building, which is quite hard to see today because the sun is setting over the hills directly behind it. But as you can see, it has a chimney. It's an industrial building, or used to be, but it's very much built with that idea in mind of, okay, we're going to build a factory, but let's make it look nice, let's make it look grand, let's make it look like a Cotswold manor house almost in the middle of this countryside location. It was a building that was constructed in the 19th century. It is called the Bliss Tweed Mill. And of course the wool trade here and cloth making and all of those things. The tweed mill here was actually opened at a time when the wool trade had been declining, but they were still pretty successful, and they provided a lot of employment for the town and the Bliss family who came here to open the factory. They became quite important benefactors for the town of Chipping Norton as well. That's not the original building. The original building from the 1820s was gutted in a fire in 1872, and this is the new version of it, if you like, that the larger, more elaborate version of it that was constructed to replace the one destroyed in a fire. It was in operation as an industrial tweed mill until 1980. It was derelict for a few years. Parts of it were used by various companies. Then it was acquired and converted into expensive apartments, and that's what it is today. But it's set here on the edge of the town, and as I pan around there, we can see the town ahead of us. And I'm going to be heading down the grass here, down the field, down the hill, and we'll get onto the road and we can start to make our way up into the town itself. So Chipping Norton, two-part name, would originally have been called Norton, which means that the northern settlement or the northern town. So it would have been kind of a prominent town on the north of this area, whatever area they were talking about when town names were actually used for the first time, which would have been about 1500 years ago probably. Chipping added later, added in the 12th century, and chipping means a market. So you get quite a few towns with chipping in them in the UK, towns and villages. Chipping Norton, Chipping Camden, Chipping Sodbury, Chipping Ongar, the town of Chippenham in Wiltshire as well, same route. And places called Cheapside, like in the city of London, there's a street called Cheapside. Anything but in the city of London, the financial district. But that comes from the same word, a market area. So it would have been the market to the north of the market town, to the north of this particular little area of Oxfordshire. And very often when you have these north, south, east, west settlement names, you will have another bit to them because there's so many of them. You know, you have Norton, you have Easton or Aston, they both mean Eastern, you'd have Western, and then you'd have Sutton. So you often have another kind of bit because to differentiate them. Oh, newly engaged grandson. Well, lovely. Congratulations to your grandson, and cold spell in Florida. Is that like probably still like a warm spell in the UK, I think, probably. So I'm not going to speak too soon, but we are coming towards the end of this field, and I am very, very pleased about that. There have been some very slippery bits, but I did want to at least go part way through that field to show you the Tweed Mill. This is the bit I'm most concerned about. It slopes down quite muddy here, look. Ooh! I don't want you suddenly to hear a big thud and a loud curse and then see just grass or sky on the screen. Oh, here we go. Ooh. It's one thing I really don't like when it's wet. The feel of wet fences and wood. Ooh. Ooh, wish I had gloves on. So we're going to make our way along the road a little bit, and there's been beautiful autumnal colours in recent weeks, and a lot of the trees now starting to lose their leaves. It's quite it's been the first, I feel like this is the first year for a long time that we've actually had defined seasons. You know, we had sort of a mixed spring, we had a really warm and dry summer, and now we're having kind of a rainy autumn time where the leaves are changing colour at the right time and coming off the trees. Beautiful colours. A lot of them now on the ground, making walking conditions a little bit hectic at some points. Linda, I didn't see it, but there probably would be a doggy bin. Yep, basically any open spaces like that, parks or public open spaces where they know that people are going to go and take their dogs, the local authority will usually provide a facility to help people to clear up after their dogs. It's kind of, I guess it's kind of the unwritten contract. You clear up after your dog and we will provide a bin for you to dispose of it. It's kind of, I guess that's the idea behind it. So, nearly back on the road, and it's the main road down westwards. The sun's over there setting, starting to come towards sunset time here, and this is a road that leads through to Norton in Marsh, is the next market town, and then it leads over the hills down towards the town of Evesham and then on to Worcester and towards the Welsh border. So it was part of a very important route from London up through Oxford and then westwards through the Cotswolds onto Worcestershire and the Welsh borders. Particularly important in the days of coaching. So that's why so many of the market towns here had a lot of coaching inns, and Chipping Norton no exception, at the meeting place of several important roads. These days most people drive around. There are bus services connecting Chipping Norton with some of the other Cotswold towns and with larger towns and cities in the area like Banbury and Oxford, which is only 18 miles away. There did used to be a railway that went through here. So just over there, there's you might be able to see some kind of warehouse buildings. That is the site of the old railway station, and we're walking across the old railway bridge at the moment, and down there you can see it's flooded over, but that's where the old railway line was, and you can see it goes into a big tunnel. And the fact that the line here goes, I think it's about 700 metres through a tunnel under the hills here. It was one of the reasons why this line was considered to be no longer viable, because of the cost of maintaining the tunnel. And the rail service here ended in the 1950s. So even before a lot of the rural lines in the UK closed in the 60s, this one had already gone. And then people from here had to use the nearest station is a place called Kingham, which is about 5 miles away. So the little industrial estate along there that I showed you, the warehouses, it's called Station Yard Industrial Estate. Leslie, exactly the Beeching report that recommended the closure of so many of the branch and rural lines in the UK. So we're making our way up the hill. I don't like to start the tours with an uphill bit. I like to start, I don't like to start, finish, or have in the middle an uphill bit if I can help it, but sometimes you have to. I was very pleased with myself on one of my recent German tours. I took my group up a church tower in Munich, 91 metres. I wasn't intending to take them up. I was intending to send them up there with the teachers from their school. But their teachers were kind of not showing much get up and go. So I kind of got the tickets, and then I said, right, come on everybody. And I went up the first few steps, and I thought, wait a minute. This means I've now got to go right to the top. And I managed it. Adrian, there was a landslip towards Hookie on the railway line. Oh, thank you, Adrian. I didn't realise you were here. I know I could rely on you for railway related details, especially in this area. I know you live just along the road there. I know, Claire, I'm pulling out all the stops today, aren't I? But I have to say I did get a very nice lunch and coffee out of it earlier, so that was worth it. So we've got a nice little park area on the left here. We've got the free kind of gym equipment. People don't want to pay to go to a gym, and they can do the push-ups and the leg pressers and the cross trainer. I think they've even got a little exercise bike thing. Find them quite often, but these are in super shape. The ones in the big cities tend to get perhaps a little bit more damaged and vandalised and things, but here, fantastic. If you were to go straight across that park, which I'm not going to. One walk across the grass is enough, and it's a private road anyway, on the other side. So where the trees are there, on the other side of there, it's kind of a mound, a small hill. There's a man-made hill, and that was the site of Chipping Norton Castle. Now there's no sign of anything like that today, only you can see the earthworks, some of the embankments, you can see where the ground has been shaped to make a ditch around it, and the hill itself. That's where the castle was, but the castle was only ever a timber castle. So it was built by the Normans when they conquered England in the 11th century. They were building them basically everywhere to control the territory that they'd conquered and make sure keep everybody in line. Strategic point here with the roads. These are not, well, they are modern roads, but they're not just modern roads. They're following the routes of very, very historic ways, trade routes and that kind of thing through the Cotswolds. So the Normans built a castle here, but this was not a place that they felt they needed to rebuild in stone and make a permanent fortification here, and so the castle very quickly fell into disrepair. I don't think there was a castle in the tour picture. It might have been a church. And that is still here, and we will see it. So as we make our way up into the town, we start to see already all the buildings pretty much built of the local stone, or if they're modern, of stone maybe from somewhere else that matches the local stone. Limestone, so all the hills here, limestone belt that runs all the way up through England from the southwest, up here through the middle of England, right up towards the northeast. The Yorkshire Dales and beyond, parts of the Pennines are also part of this limestone belt. So the town grew up as a trading town. Castle was here. There's a small settlement next to the castle, but in the 13th century the lords of the manor here got the charter from the king to be able to hold a weekly market. That is when the name Chipping was added to the name of the town, and ever since they have had a weekly market. We'll see the marketplace a little bit later, and that was when the town started to grow. And of course, like a lot of these towns, where you have a market, people find that if they are artisans, if they're making things, it makes much more sense to live and produce in the town where you're going to be selling the stuff. So people move to the town and take on properties here, and they have their families and their workshops, and the town grows up on that trade. It was not one of the big wool market towns. It was not one of the Cotswold wool trade in terms of the massive exports of Cotswold wool to the Netherlands, to Italy, and even further afield. That was concentrated on a few key market towns. Chipping Norton was not one of those. There would have been wool for sale, but it would not have been the wool for the export market. It would have been the wool for local use. And there would have been livestock and all of the agricultural produce, and then of course the things that were being made, the leather goods, the pottery, the metal goods, all of those things, wooden goods, and actually wood itself that were produced within the town. Now we're going to just take a little walk up here and then double back on ourselves so I can show you something that's here. Just ate your chocolate chip protein bar for breakfast. Oh, Linda, sounds very nice. I might need one after this, walking up here. And it was a place where some of the local families, especially those who owned land, were able to make a lot of money from tenant farmers, from selling the goods from their land, and also if they were the merchants who were selling things like cloth, if they were mercers, or if they were sort of figures in another one of the medieval industries. So by the time the 17th and 18th centuries came around, Chipping Norton was a prosperous town, and what happened then was that a lot of the traditional medieval stone cottages were replaced, particularly on the main streets, because people wanted to show off their wealth and they wanted to have things built in the latest styles of architecture. So that's why we see a lot of Georgian architecture around the centre of the town, such as this building up ahead of us, which was initially a private residence, but then in the 19th century became a school. And we might actually, at one end of it now is it's now a dental studio. But you go in the thing, you can still see perhaps on the plaque there, still see that door, that would have been boys, and the one at the other end with where the plaque is worn away completely would have been girls. And the school moved elsewhere over the years, expanded and so on, and the building was used as office space, and in 1971 it was taken over and became something that you perhaps would not expect to find in a town like this. This building became the Chipping Norton Recording Studios. Now, if there's one thing we associate with the Cotswolds, we probably tend to think of more historic things and more arts and crafts and traditional things. We don't tend to think of places where number one hit records are recorded. But here in this building, well, what was recorded here? Baker Street by Jerry Rafferty, very, very famous song, was recorded right here. Later, another very famous song, or perhaps not, I certainly don't like it as much as Baker Street, that would be the Proclaimers, 500 Miles, that was recorded here. A lot of leading artists have worked here over the years. Duran Duran, Jeff Beck, Radiohead, who were founded just down the road in Oxford. So this is a really excellent place where they've recorded a lot of hit records. I suppose, you know, it's they could probably rent a nice cottage or mansion house to stay in. It'd be away from all the hustle and bustle of, you know, I suppose a good place to come to concentrate on getting your new song or album recorded here in the countryside. But yeah, the Chipping Norton Recording Studio. Let's see what the sign says. It might tell some people that I'm status quo. Jerry Rafferty, Randy Rand, Steve Winwood, Beverly Craven. Oh, lots of well-known acts recorded here. And I think that's really cool. I just well, there's a really busy road. Leads over towards, well, the main road leads over to Morton and then on to Evesham and Worcester, but you can turn off it after a couple of miles and that leads over to Stowe on the Wold and Morton on the Water and all the places over that end of the Cotswolds. So it is a place that has a lot of traffic through it, Chipping Norton. So we're going to head back down the hill a little way and we're going to walk along a little lane towards the church. And it's known, the town's known locally as Chippy, which is why I think someone mentioned it in the chat. It's also, of course, a slang term for a fish and chip shop, but Chippy around here refers to Chipping Norton. And one of the buses is called the Chippy Charger or something, I can't remember, it's something like that, has a funny little name. So this is a nice little lane called Diston's Lane. It's named after a wealthy local family who had a farm on this site. One of the things the town has done for Remembrance Day, with Remembrance Day having, you know, the Armistice Day is tomorrow, but Remembrance Sunday was yesterday, they've done these things where people who lost their lives in the wars they've put little plaques up about them on the houses where they lived, which is really nice. There's a few of them I spotted today as I was walking around. This is a lovely little lane, and very desirable residential property. Quite a few of the places, I think, are also holiday cottages as well. So let's take a look. Start to get a view over of the church in a moment. And the church, as you might expect, you've got a little settlement with a where this castle was built, and it had a little Anglo-Saxon church, probably a wooden one, I suspect. And in the 13th century, they replaced it with a stone church. It was added to particularly in the 14th and 15th centuries, because the wool trade had made the Cotswolds one of the wealthiest, most prosperous areas of the country, and one of the ways that people showed off their wealth in those days, and tried to ensure the goodness for their eternal souls was to make hefty donations to churches for construction, for monuments and so on. And that's very much what the case was here. So we end up with this beautiful St. Mary's Church, tucked away in a little hollow very close to where the castle used to be and where the original settlement would have been as well. Down here where people had access to water sources rather than up on the higher ground, just high enough to avoid constant flooding. So beautiful Cotswold Wall Church. That's lovely, and a really peaceful spot here in the churchyard. There's a number of prominent local families who have donated memorials, not just when the church was built, but in the sort of the 18th, 19th centuries. One of them was the Dawkins family, and they were the ancestors of the evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins, who currently has a house here in Chipping Norton, where his ancestors came from. So the church tower was one of the last parts to be built, 1485, and it was restored in 1825. The rest of the church kind of grew up gradually between the 12th and the 15th centuries. Beautiful. And one of the most distinctive features of St. Mary's Church is that the porch is hexagonal. Now, there's only a handful of churches in the whole country that have hexagonal porches. I think the most spectacular one is up in Ludlow, where we've been on one of our tours. And I probably mentioned at the time that the Ludlow one was based on the one here in Chipping Norton. So this, you can't really see it from this angle, but You know, normally you'd expect that the porch would just kind of jut out from the building, but you can see it's this hexagonal shape. And when we go, if you just go inside the porch, you can see has these great, if porch was built, it really showed that you were somebody. You know, the town was a place of some status, and the people who had paid for that were people of status. And I'm not going to go inside the church because signal dropped off drastically just by going into the porch. So we're not even going to attempt that. It's I would say it's a nice church, but it's not a spectacular church. So now it's time to go up the hill again. Look at me today. I was going to say I earned my cake, but I didn't even have one. Oh, well, I'll have to rectify that later. So this is called Church Street, or maybe Church Lane. There's one of each. I can never remember which is which. And the first building that we come to is this one. It's called the Old Vicarage. And this would have been a pretty spectacular place for the priest to live. You know, often in these kinds of towns, traditionally the second biggest house in the town after the Lord of the Manor's house would have been the one where the priest lived. This was later extended because it was converted into a school, and it certainly looks a little bit more like a school, I think, than an actual house these days. I think it is apartments, despite the fact that they have such expensive cars and parked here. I think it is. I don't think it's one house. And this building here is now the vicarage. So the current house where the vicar of the church lives is there, although they may not, because a lot of these rural parishes, the same priest will be responsible for multiple villages, so they only need to live in one of them. Now we saw the plaques I talked about for Remembrance Day, and there's a permanent one here. Commemorates an accident on the 21st of August 1942. So a crash here, an RAF plane came down, 8 people on board, so a heavy bomber by the look of it, I would say. All 8 killed. And that's the commemoration of the Royal Air Force. The Per Ardua ad Astra is the motto of the Royal Air Force. And, you know, actually there are a number of plaques like this around the Cotswolds. There's one up at Broadway Tower, where a bomber carrying a mix of Canadian and British aircrew crashed. There are various other ones. And that's because there were a number of important air bases in the Cotswolds during World War II. It was far enough inland that it was kind of not out of range, but the planes, the Luftwaffe, could not find them. They were in these rural areas. They just, once the lights had dimmed, they no chance of seeing them. And so a lot of missions were being launched from here. And obviously you had situations where the planes are trying to get back to their base. Maybe some of the crew are wounded from anti-aircraft fire. Maybe they're losing fuel and the plane's very damaged. They're trying to sort of get back, to just limp back to their base, and just falling short. And that's what's happening here. It's not due to any enemy action directly in this area. So here, close to the church, beautiful row of almshouses. 8 of them. originally, converted into 4 in the 20th century so that they could all have an indoor bathroom and more modern facilities. There are 9 chimneys. That was for symmetry, just for the design of the building. So you had symmetry with the one on each end and one between each pair of eaves. But there were only ever 8 cottages. They were donated by a wealthy cloth merchant or mercer who lived in Chipping Norton. His name was Cornish, and Mr. Cornish was a Puritan, so a very religious man, and he stipulated that these almshouses were for 8 needy women of decent appearance and conversation. So I think some of his Puritan ideas are coming through in his stipulations for who was going to live there as well. Put your name down, Susan. Okay, there we go. I don't know whether those rules still apply, but the Cornish, Henry Cornish and his family were quite substantial benefactors to the church and to the town, and through the almshouses. They also set up kind of a local charity as well to help people in need. I don't know how often they check, ladies. I mean, you might just have to convince them on one day, and then once you're in, you're okay, you know. Might be all right. So we're going to go have a little look down here. It's a very cool building that I really like, and that is the Chipping Norton Theatre. It's developed from an old chapel, an old nonconformist chapel, being converted into a lovely little theatre. Isn't that cool? With a little bar and gallery next to it. So, you know, this is another reason this is a town where it's got things where local people are going to come and enjoy the facilities, lots of nice pubs and a few nice restaurants and that kind of thing, and you can be able to go to the theatre. They've got a lovely little cinema as well that I think is quite new. I've not noticed it before, that I saw as I was walking through another part of the town. Now, the street we're on here is called Spring Street. That's not spring like the season, that's spring like where you get some water from. So this street is built at the level of the spring line. So the spring line is the height in the Cotswolds, on any hills really, that where you have the split in the different layers of rock where the fresh water can come bubbling up. So we have this had a number of natural springs along here. Obviously, important place for people to build their homes next to the sources of water, particularly if they were involved in trades that required a lot of fresh water. And this, ever since medieval times, has been known as Spring Street. Of course, having the natural springs also made a huge difference in terms of the fact that people would have good access to clean drinking water. It would have made a huge difference, and it would also have been probably the reason why there were a number of very good local breweries here as well, because at least 2 of the local breweries that I'm aware of, they had springs on the premises, and they used the water from the spring to brew their beer with. Now in a moment we're going to walk up onto the high street, and what we'll see, this was really the beginning of the market square, but you would never guess now, and that's because in around the 16th century the market square was a huge open area in the middle of the town, but then people started to build kind of a little row of buildings jutting out into it. They started off as, I guess, as market stalls, and then became more and more permanent until it kind of divided the market at this end and made at the market at the other end much smaller. It became known as Middle Row because it was in the middle of the market. But when they got to the 18th century and they started to replace a lot of the older buildings with the nice new Georgian ones, it was the buildings facing out onto the main street that got that treatment. So what that means is that the ones here, these are some of the older original buildings, much smaller and of a much older design, 15th, 16th century buildings here on this lower side of the marketplace, which is so it's pretty cool, and that's why they've survived, really. If the market had still been one big open space, the chances are that these wouldn't have survived in their original form. They would also have had the upgrade in the Georgian period. So we're very fortunate that they do still exist here. Ooh, last bit of uphill now. Look, this is what goes up must go down. Very true of me on a tour. At the town library here, one of the old buildings in Middle Row. '20th century buildings that were attached to the rear of the building that faces out onto the road, which is called the Guildhall, and it's been a seat of local government since 1607, and still was sort of owned by the local authority, so they added to it, and that's why they have the library on the back of it. Now, there's one of the pubs here I want to talk to you about. It's quite a cool pub sign, one of many pubs here, coaching inns, and on the marketplace, of course, people are going to be coming here to the market. They're going to be looking for refreshment, might be looking for a place to stay, and so, you know, it's just always been a place that's had a lot of pubs. This one is called the Blue Boar. That boar doesn't look very blue. There's another on the other side that looks much more blue, but you can't actually get to it on foot along the pavement very easily, so you have to take my word for it. The Blue Boar is, or was, or maybe still is, the insignia of the De Vere family, the De Vere family, Earls of Oxford. One of the people that some people claim wrote the plays of Shakespeare was a member of that family, the Earl of Oxford. But this predates Shakespeare, this inn sign, because this pub was on land within Chipping Norton that was owned by the De Vere family. But the De Vere family had their lands confiscated because they were supporters of the Lancastrians in the Wars of the Roses. And the Yorkish king, the House of York, Richard III, when he came to the throne, he confiscated the lands of the De Vere family. Now, as we know, Richard III didn't last very long. He was defeated after a couple of years as king, and the lands were restored to their previous owners. And so on the inn here, it was renamed after the insignia of the family, the De Vere family, and what we have is the Blue Boar, their insignia, and it is trampling on, and who knows doing what else, on two flags that bear the white boar, which is the symbol of Richard III. So it's really saying, yeah, we had the last laugh here. Our Blue Boar is trampling on your white boar, and you are buried in a car park, mate. Maybe that's not exactly the words they used. But so I said that this building with the library on the back had been a seat of local government since 1607. There was an older 15th century building on this site. You can see particularly the upper windows and the doorway are much older. That was the site of a religious organisation called the Guild of Holy Cross, That was closed during the Reformation, and later a secular organisation was set up here to run the town's affairs. The town council was granted a charter by King James I in 1607, and so this was the town hall effectively for Chipping Norton until 1842, when they built a new one, but it remained in the possession of the town council and later the district council and the Oxfordshire county, which is why the library is still there, and it's still a building where you have sort of public service type facilities available. Right, let's get up to the top level. The two sort of main streets that face out onto the marketplace are known as top side and low side. Not top side and bottom side, that just wouldn't be very good, would it? Top side and low side. And so this, we're looking at top side. This is middle row here, and behind that low side the older buildings. And wait a minute, I'll tell you that in a moment. Show you this really cool wall here with lots of modern designs on it. It's like a kind of street art, I don't know. I thought at first it was a tattoo place, but I don't think it is. I think it's just an art, some kind of art organisation that's based in there these days. Pretty cool though. Now, it's one of the big pubs on the marketplace. Used to be known as the White Hart. It's believed that there's been a pub on that site in one form or another since the 13th century, because the White Hart was the insignia of King Richard II, and he was the king when a law was first introduced that required pubs to have a name and a sign to designate that they were premises that were offering lodging and meals and things like that. So it became a very common sign, and the White Hart no longer a pub, it became a coaching inn. But in 1745 it was the venue of a sort of a riot, a political riot. The Tory party had organised a dinner within the hotel there, and it was at election time, so they were discussing their election strategy and so on, and their political opponents in town, from the Whig party, they broke into the building and attacked, smashed up the room where the Tory representatives were having their party dinner, and it was known as the election riot in 1745. I'd like to say that the quality of political discourse in this country has moved on since then, but I don't know how much true that is, and or even if it has, it might be on the slide again back towards that kind of thing. In much later times, we talked about the various rock stars who went to the recording studio around the corner, but from a political riot to someone who was known for having quite a riotous character, Keith Moon, drummer with The Who. He owned the White Hart for a time and would often stay there. It wasn't his permanent residence, but he would often stay there. So a lot of rock star connections here in Chipping Norton. A lot of celebrities. Probably one of the most famous celebrities currently associated with the town is Jeremy Clarkson. His TV show Clarkson's Farm. The farm in question is just a couple of miles from here on the outskirts of the town. Oh, now here we go. Now there's another family I want to mention that lived on the marketplace, but I've not been able to find out which house it was. So it was family called the Averill family, and they were a long established family in Chipping Norton, the local tradesmen. They were sort of not super wealthy but moderately wealthy, and William Averill in the early 17th century decided to do what many people at that time were doing, particularly I guess if they were at odds with the overriding religious consensus, and that was to go and make a new start in North America. So the Averill family moved to Massachusetts. They moved over there and made new lives for themselves very successfully. They had about 7 kids in total. I think when they moved they only had only a couple of them had been born yet, but one of them was their daughter Sarah Averill, and Sarah Averill grew up then in Massachusetts. She married a man called John Wilds, and Sarah Averill is notable for a very tragic reason. She was unfortunately one of the women who was hanged in Salem as a witch. So the Salem witch trials, very, very famous, notorious episode in history, and Sarah Averill, born here, right here in Chipping Norton, was one of the women who was hanged for witchcraft as part of that series of trials. Probably all wish they'd stayed here. So I said that the town council moved in 1842. This was the new building that they created. This is the town hall. 1842, on the marketplace. You have to imagine that marketplace right the way across here, the full width down to where you can see the buildings there, and all the way along there to where the Blue Boar was. At one time, on both sides of the road, that would have been the market square. So you imagine on a day when there were livestock and all the agricultural produce on market days, people coming from all around, would have been a real something to see, definitely something to smell, although you might not want to do that. But you know, that's what made this town prosperous. It's what made this town important. It's a lot of, like a lot of the Cotswolds, it's a lot of faded glory. You know, these days the town is still doing very well. A lot of wealthy people live around here, and it's got a population in total of about 7,000. The town hall is no longer used as a local government building in the sense of a place where the local government would meet, but it is used for local government services in a number of different ways. And well, I've done quite well for time today. Oh, I have to say, this bakery and tea room's here. If you're ever in Chipping Norton, Nash's Bakery and Tea Room, highly recommend. I swear, I went there for my lunch. It was very difficult to find a seat anywhere because everybody was trying to shelter from the rain, but they had seats available, and I had a delicious sandwich and a coffee, and their cakes and biscuits and all their products looked absolutely delicious and super friendly as well, so I definitely recommend it. Now I'm just being very careful. So we started off on the road out of Chipping Norton to over towards Morton in Marsh, Stow-on-the-Wold, and onwards to Evesham and Worcester. If you were to go the way we've just walked, we would be, if we were coming from that direction along the main road from out of town, we would have been coming from Banbury and the road to Oxford as well. So very, very important route, because we're in the county of Oxfordshire. Oxfordshire, the closest large city, with all the with all that goes with Oxford in terms of its academic history and its industry as well. And the road on this side of the market square, well, that goes out towards some of the smaller villages, but also on towards Burford, another great Cotswold market town where we've been, and Chalbury, another one that we've not been to yet, another one we'll have to check out at some time. But I wanted to finish just down here because I always love these links that these towns have. And I love the fact that you've got the link to the rock music. I love the fact that you've got the link to the Salem witch trials and the Wars of the Roses and all of those things. But I love the fact that this building has a link to medical history. Really important medical history. A man by the name of Reverend Edward Stone lived here in the early 18th century, and he was interested in medicine, but he was a religious man, but interested in medicine. And he was interested in it was a time when scientific study was starting to become much more widespread, and he was interested in studying traditional herbal remedies to try to study them scientifically, to try to work out what it was about them that made them effective against certain illnesses and complaints. And he managed to isolate the particular chemical constituents of willow bark that made it effective against fevers, headaches and other things. He submitted his findings to the Royal Society in London and was known as being the man who made this discovery, which of course his discovery subsequently picked up and followed on, leading to the development of aspirin, one of the most important medicines developed in the history of medicine. Of course, it was a big company, Bayer in Germany, that had the actual patent on aspirin as a trademark and made the big bucks from it. But it was Chipping Campden that saw the isolation of the relevant chemicals and rightly commemorated with a plaque on the wall where he did that groundbreaking work. And I want to just take a look back at that lovely building. It was a coaching inn and it was headquarters of one of the local breweries as well. That was after the time that Edward Stone had actually lived there. And we'll finish just with a look back along the market square and a look at the town hall, and almost exactly we've done an hour, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And we even get a little bit of sunlight on the Cotswold limestone up there in the market as well. So I want to thank you all very, very much for joining me here today. Adrienne, shop Oats, I did see it. Who used to own that? I'd like to be interested to know. But, yeah, thank you to everyone who supported this community funded tour. Like I say, if you want to support the next round of community tours, I'm going to do a Peak District one. I'm going to pick a location, probably a new location in the Peak District for the first one. We've done quite a lot of Cotswold ones now. I've also put up a community funded tour in the Cheshire town of Congleton, which is a cool name, and there's a lot of great links there as well. You'll see why I wanted to do one there, because the links here that we've got, it's a little bit like that, only probably a little bit more so. But thank you so much to all of you, and I hope you have a lovely rest of the day. I'm hoping to put up an As Live tour. I've got a few recorded for sometime next week. Our next live tour is another community funded one, which is on Saturday the 22nd. That is in the town of Southwell. If you're looking for it, you might think it says Southwell. Don't be fooled. Southwell. And I'll be there on Saturday the 22nd at 3 p.m. UK time for another live tour, community funded, and hope to see you there. In the meantime, have a lovely evening everybody, and it's been great to do this tour, and whoever of you has got your fingers and everything else crossed that I didn't get soaked on the tour, thank you very much. You can uncross them now, and I'll go and get back in the car before the rain comes. So take care everybody, thanks a lot, I'll see you soon, bye for now.